Good morning, students. Welcome to today's session. So today we'll be focusing on Unit 1 of your module known as Foundations of Public Administration, Public Management, and Governance. Um, my name is Terence Malowela. As some of you would have met during the live orientation that were hosted for the past 2 days. So today we'll be looking at the subtopic administration, public administration, and public management. But what we're going to do in this session is that we'll focus on two concepts, being administration and public administration. So although we'll share a little more about public management, because public management is another concept, or let me just say a new concept that was generated because of the old traditional public administration. But let's just assume this is your first time hearing about public administration. You have never been taught about what is administration and why public administration or why public management. So to start off well is that when we talk about the domain or the concept of public administration, we're referring to uh, the public sector or the public service and its operations. In other words, in every nation, we must be guided, or there must be a government of some sort that is being appointed for a certain period of time to deal with community needs or to address community needs. What I mean is, in every society, the people cannot govern themselves. So what they need is a government or a group of men and women that will be responsible for the day-to-day or the daily governmental operations. So all of that, we refer to it as public administration. Some will argue that politics and the management of resources and the operation of all kinds of business fall under public administration, which is true because when you look at some simple definitions of public administration, it deals with let me just say, it says it has to do with the management of men and women and how they manage resources so that they can be able to deliver on services. So what you're going to understand here is that for you as a public administration student, when you look at your South African government, automatically, when you look at your national government, your provincial government, and your local government, think about public administration. All that is happening within these three fields of government, think about public administration and how it functions, because that is what you'll be dealing with. So we're dealing with every sphere of government in terms of how it operates and how it's supposed to be managed. So that is why we have that last part there called public management. So let us go and see what the slide are all about. So in this unit, what we want the student to understand is that you must be able to define and understand the term administration, and also define the concept of public administration. And lastly, you must be able to understand the difference between public administration, both as an academic study and practice. Now, let me just go back to public administration as an academic study, as a practice. Like I said, remember, I said that you'll be the one studying public administration as an academic study. Like, that is your module, that is your qualification. So what you learn from your qualification must prepare you in terms of how are you going to practice that when you get employed, or for those that are already employed, they know automatically what public administration is all about because they are already in the field and they are already practicing public administration. So let us see what public administration is all about. Now, in most of my sessions or most of my lectures, I always want to understand what is something that we're busy dealing with, or what is that kind, or what is that topic that we're trying to talk about. So that's why the title there says, what is public administration? We want to understand what is the origin, or how did public administration come about. Now, for me, what I normally do is I go into a concept and try to understand all the elements or all the aspect of that concept, because I want to define it one by one so that I don't get confused when I hear about public administration. So what I'm going to do here is, first, I want us to understand public administration is formed by two different terms, meaning it is the term or the word public as well as the word administration. Now, the term public, like it says there, it refers to your government, your public institutions, public organizations, public agencies. All that is public refers to your, or that term there. Or sometimes it also refers to the people or the citizens, because at the end of the day, the reason why I say it refers to the citizens as well is that those public organizations, institutions, government departments, municipalities, all kinds of institutions that operate for the public, at the end of the day, must serve the communities because they focus on, let me say, government activities and actions. Because at the end of the day, each and every institution established must serve the purpose, and it must serve that purpose in line with the government activities and actions. What I mean by that is that any institution declaring itself as a public organization or as a public institution, automatically it must do so in line with the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa of 1996, because what you're trying to do there is that you are going to provide services or goods to the public or the citizens. So we must know your purpose for existence. So you will define that. That is why each and every institution will have its own vision statement, mission statement, goals or objectives. You know, all these things like the reason for them to exist, so that we understand this is their vision and this is what they intend to do. So I hope we understand that term, the term public. Now, what is administration? Now, for me, when I looked up for the word, it's a Latin word meaning administer, which means to execute. Now, when you execute something, is that you are going to carry out, or you're going to implement it, like the second word says. So I try to find all these terms so that you can understand what to administer is all about. You execute, you implement, you carry out, you serve, you direct, you control, you take care for, or you look after the people. Now, what that means is that you must be able to execute. For example, let's look at the word to execute. First of all, in government, we are operating, or we're working based on legislation. Legislation meaning that we must look at the programs and the plans or all the directives that comes from our government. And then what do? We study what the government wants. We study what is being planned for that specific term of office. then what we do is that we execute. So execution is normally for both ministers, both chief directors or director generals of a particular department, like your Department of Education. Let's just use that one as an example. So when you look at the Department of Education, you have the Minister of Basic Education. What she does now is that she must look at what is it that has been planned for her department, and then take that and present it to the Director General of her department, and then the Director General will take whatever plan or whatever program that has been planned out or issued out by the Ministry of Education, and then share it across all the Department of Education or Basic Education. Now, those people that form the structure of the Department of Basic Education, all of them, as much as they have different offices, we refer to them as administrators, because at the end of the day, they execute policy, they execute plans, they implement such plans in such a way that you get to achieve your goals and objectives as a government department. Then it's the same thing. They implement, they carry out, they serve the citizens or the learners or the institutions that works with the Department of Education. They control, they direct, and they take care or they look after the people through the execution of their policies. Now, literally, the term administration means management of public or private affairs. The reason why we say public or private affairs is that some affairs are need to be done privately by the department by itself, and simply public administration is known as the management of public affairs. So when we talk about public affairs, we're talking about all those policies or all those needs that may be raised by the community. So I want you to understand what public administration is all about. But yeah, we'll also look at the definitions that will help us understand further what public administration is all about. Now, you look at the continuation of the slides. The first point says many unelected public servants can be considered to be public administration. This is what I was talking about when I said that when you look at the Department of Basic Education, all the directors, all director general, chief directors, director head of departments, etc. These guys are what we call administrators at the end of the day, because they make sure that they execute the policies set out within the Ministry of the Department of Basic Education. Same thing with all these other departments like Department of Education or Communications and Digital Technologies, Department of Cooperative Governance, Department of Employment and Labor. These departments, all of them, they must execute all of their policies in line with the South African Constitution. So you will understand all this. You know these things already. For those that are is their first time coming across public administration, they know how. They already know that there is Department of this and this and this. Maybe the only thing that was a problem is that they did not know that there was public administration that guides or proper or is used as a guide to make sure that these departments operate within the parameters of public administration. So public administration are public servants working in public departments and agencies at all levels of government. That statement is very important. Don't just read to memorize it. Understand that these people must be working within public or government departments and agencies at all levels of government. We're talking about your national government, your provincial government, and your local government. These are the people that work for the government as a whole. That is why I gave such an example of those different departments. But yeah, most of the information can be understood as you continue to read and read and read other additional materials, because this is just a summary of what I already know. So there's more that you can understand. Now, let's look at the definition of public administration. Remember, they were trying to understand what is public administration. So what is public administration versus the definition of public administration? They are not the same thing, as although they fall within the same category. But what you need to understand first is what is something, and then how do you define it? So that's what it's all about. Now, what you're gonna hear here is that, first of all, there is what we call in public administration founders of public administration, those that came up with the idea of public administration. Although some argue that the guy that I just mentioned there, according to Woodrow Wilson, he was the president of the United States during those years, 1887. Who was the most vibrant young professor. So you can imagine he taught a lot about the study of public administration, where he didn't just become the president of the United States by politics alone. He was a professor. He was a young professor when he started in the School of Public Law. So this guy is the one that actually began to make public administration famous. So we refer to him as the father of public administration. But although there are other scholars before him that were already into practicing public administration, but the study of public administration emanated with Woodrow Wilson. Most studies will contend to that. I mean, will actually support my statement, because it was made famous from the American perspective first, and then it spread across. But it does not mean that Africans were not already practicing public administration. Of course they were, because you had your chiefs, you had all kinds of people that already were handling or heading community forums or community groups. You had chiefs or your kings or your queens. These people had to understand public administration, because at the end of the day, in the kingdom or whatever is it that they were under, they had to execute policies and legislations that were being set by a cabinet of queens and kings, or the king's cabinet or the queen's cabinet in the African terms, because that's a very long time. Obviously, most African states were already under the rulership of certain kings and queens or community leaders, or whatever you want, or chiefs. We can use that word, chiefs. They're already there. So they just did not spread their own study of public administration. But yeah, everyone taught someone something. That's what I'm trying to say. But yeah, in public administration, currently, we do acknowledge Woodrow Wilson as the first president that was so focused on the study of public administration. So what he did is that he defines public administration as the detailed, systematic execution of public law. What he means here is that everything about government must be detailed so that it can enable the administrators to execute public policy or public law. So every particular application of law is public administration. That's what Woodrow Wilson is trying to say here. Now, the first point talks about public administration is the action, or is that part of government, which means that the purposes and goals of government are realized. In other words, you are trying to take whatever is on paper and then execute it practically. In other words, everything that has already been written, everything that has been published by the government, either a legislation or a program, goals and objectives, whatever it is, or your NDP, all those promises or all those plans that have been set out there, or those goals that have been set out there for achieving the Agenda 2030 in the NDP, the National Development Plan. When you execute everything that is in there, it's called public administration. So you get the picture now that, okay, It means that something must be written down, documented, and then legalized, or let me just say promulgated as the main, we use that term mostly in public administration. So when you say something is promulgated, you're actually saying that it is being published by government to be a legal document that can be used, or that can be used to guide the functioning of a government department. Now, again, you look at public administration. Public administration consists of all those operations having for their purpose of fulfillment or enforcement of public policy. What this statement simply means is that as public administration student, you must understand that there will be operations of government, or government operations, or government activities. Let me just use that one. So all those government activities must be within the purpose of fulfilling the public policy that is already documented by the government itself, either the national government, the provincial government, or the local government. But yeah, we'll deal with such specific spheres of government later on. Or maybe let me just say that your South African government, for those that maybe might be confused now, your South African government is made out of your national government, your provincial government, and your local government. Local government comprises 257 municipalities currently. So your provincial government, we have 9 provincial government, or 9 provincial legislatures, and you only have 1 national government. So your national government is the law-making body. The law-making body, we're referring to it as the supreme government, or the central government, that gets to transfer all of its formulated policies to your provincial government, and then the provincial governments get to transfer the national policy to municipalities, in terms of district municipalities, local municipalities, to make sure that they have one voice. Although a province can be able to create its own laws, or we refer to them as ordinances, but they must be guided with what the national government is. In other words, you create a policy as a provincial government within the parameters of your national government, as well as municipalities. They establish bylaws, or they create bylaws based on what that province allows, but they have their own, in other words, they are independent. In other words, they are also what we call autonomous local governments. In other words, they have the power to create their own bylaws that only functions or only works within their area of jurisdiction. Jurisdiction, we're talking about their own local areas. In other words, a municipality or the city of Joburg cannot create a bylaw that is national. It only works for the city of Johannesburg, or maybe a municipality in Bushbuckridge. That bylaw is only for the Bushbuckridge local municipality. I hope we understand that, because it's something that you must do or study on your own. But yeah, I think the study guide will provide you with much more structures in terms of what I'm saying. Now, there are definitions that I think we can adopt. Yeah, the 3 definitions. I'm not going to go through all of them. I just want you to look at them and be able to understand what public administration is all about. But I can just read one of them, being definition number 1. So public administration is that part of the science of administration. When we say the science of administration, we're talking about the tools, the planning, your directing, your staffing, all of those things that administration is all about, has to do with the government. So it concerns itself primarily with the executive branch. Executive branch is more like or let me just say, it is headed by the president, Cyril Ramaphosa, has a cabinet, or he's a cabinet head. We refer to them as the executive branch. So in that executive branch, he appoints ministers that he wants. So that's why you have different ministers that they have to be loyal to him. That's one thing about public administration or politics. So when we say loyal to him, is you take directives from your head, because he is the head of the executive branch or the executive. And then what you normally hear from them is that they execute policy based on what has already been established by the government. So that's your day-to-day or your daily government. These ones, the executive branch, are forever active, more than the other two branches, which are your parliament and the judicial. These ones, they come as more like referees to understand what is happening with the executive branch. Now, the work of government is done there in most cases. So obviously, we look at the legislature of public administration. Within this definition, I mean, the legislature is what we refer to as your parliament being in Cape Town. So what they do there is that the parliament is the law-making body. That's one thing that I need you to capture in your reading and everything, that the parliament will refer to it as the lawmaking body. It is independent and it is accountable to the public, or to the people of South Africa. That is why when you watch your SONA, State of the Nation address, it is always done in parliament, because parliament must be able to account to the public. Then they make laws, they debate laws. In other words, every government department, before they make sure that there's a policy that is being established, it must be introduced in parliament, it must be debated on, and after that, it must also be checked by the judiciary. Judiciary, we're referring to your court, Supreme Court, Constitutional Court, your magistrate court, whatever, all of them. But in most cases, at the national level, we normally refer to the Constitutional Court, as well as the Supreme Court, because these are the courts that must check that each and every legislation that has been made is not in contravention with the original constitution of the country. So you can read this definition and know them. We'll be using them in your assessment number 1 and so on and so. But there are definitions also that you can read to expand. But to not confuse people to read a lot of definitions, let's just stick to these 3 and know them and understand them. So we'll be playing around these definitions. So there is what we call public administration as a discipline, like I said, in the learning outcome, that you must be able to understand what is public administration as a discipline or as a study. So what we're trying to say here is that the domain of public administration, or public administration as a discipline, is traditionally associated with the domain of the public sector and the executive duties of government. Like I said, the executive duties of government are those of the president and all the cabinet ministers. So various developments during the past decades have marked effect on the public sector or the public service, and this helps to create or to structure all governmental roles and governmental institutions in saving the society. Of course, there will be partners in between, called private bodies or non-governmental organizations and other entities necessary to re-evaluate the era of the study of public administration. So very, very important. Now, the study of public administration has to do with what managers do on a daily basis. So it's about the development and testing of new theories, principles, processes to improve service delivery. Because at the end of the day, it's all about effective service delivery. So the discipline that prepares students for a career in the public service. So this is the module. when we say the study of public administration. So this is what the module is all about. It's all about preparing you to become better public servants so that you can go out there and serve as public servants in the public service or as the public sector. So there's a difference between the word public service and public service. So public service, we're referring to your national and provincial government departments, while public sector, you're referring to your local government, your provincial, as well as your national government. So it's about research. It's about studying. This is the definition of public administration as a discipline. Is the study of public administration, testing theories, preparing students in their career to become effective public servants. So again, here, what we can say is that we study how public administration works. So to sum up what public administration is all about, I want to talk about, you see that acronym, the post-COP. So before we can go on and discuss this, there's a history behind this. The history is all about the South African public administration, right? But before that, South African public administration is not original with South Africa or with Africa. It got its study from the US government. So around 1933, 1937, I think there are two guys known as public administration scholars. One of them, I think it was Luther Gulick and Landwall Ewick. These were the two guys appointed by the 32nd president of the United States, known as Franklin Delano Roosevelt, I think. Yeah, this is the president that was so smart to create what we call an administrative committee or administrative body within his government in that time. So he wanted these guys to actually sit down and come up with the most simpler way of understanding what is the role of chief administrators in government. What is it that they're supposed to do? Because sometimes there's confusing, or maybe people are confused as what do you become, or what becomes your role after you have done the study of public administration. So what you want to understand here is that this summarizes the work of an administrator. So they came up with the acronym POSCOP, which stands for number one, the P stand for planning, the O organizing, the S staffing, the D directing, coordination, reporting, and budgeting. So these are the simpler functions of an administrator. As an administrator or as a public administration student, you must be able to plan. So you have heard of the phrase which says, those that fail to plan to fail. You understand? So what that statement simply means is that if you do not plan, automatically you're planning to fail. That's like something. You cannot be a government employee that has no plan, even if you are not the manager, even if you are not the director of your institution. Your work must be planned. You must be effective in planning, because planning helps you to organize yourself and your work, because that's what is more important. In other words, planning has to be the most priority of your daily routine. You plan, and then you prioritize, and then you organize. That's more important. In other words, planning is the priority of your job, and then it helps you organize all these little tasks that you have. And then staffing, this one is done normally by the top management of the company or of the organization, because they're the ones that knows who has what skills and they can fit in what office or what position. And then directing, this one also is the management function, whereby the head of the department must be able to direct the whole department in terms of leadership, management of resources. And when we talk about these terms, are big terms that you need to define to understand that, but we won't go into what leadership or management is all about. To understand the two is that managers are to direct. Direct means you direct how resources ought to be used, how time should be managed, because they do not control time, but they can direct how time can be used in terms of creating schedules and knowing when and how certain tasks are to be carried out. And then coordination. Coordination, this is where you work with other offices or other officials or other departments to make sure that the work of your public service or public sector becomes smooth and enjoyable. You know, when offices work together to achieve a particular goal or a particular plan, it makes people want to work. And this is one thing that is lacking to these days in government, because I've worked in government and I've seen people not coordinating because they think they are smart enough. And that can be, you can become sick as an employee with such amount of work. You need to be able to share your work if possible. And this should not be something that is coming from a single person. It must come from the whole department to say that if there's a function or there's an activity or a task, let us help each other to work well together and make sure that everything is smooth. And then reporting is more like you are, or having done all these other functions, you must be able to report back to your superiors to say that this is what we've done. This is the report. For me, in government, my office was always responsible for coming up with the monthly report that this is what we've done this month. This is the people that we work with. These are the programs that we were dealing with, or this is what we've been doing, to reflect on that particular month. It's very, very important because that helps you with budgeting to know that, okay, next month, here's the budget that you need for you to be able to complete your task. So I can go on and on, but you need to read more on those things. Now, these ones I won't touch much because they are already there. What I refer to them is the substantive matters of concern of which the study of public administration must address. It must address your organization, the management of personnel, method and procedures on how people are supposed to work. So I need you to read those and understand them further. And then these are the concerns of public administration. This is what you do as a manager or as a public servant. This is what you need to understand. This includes, for example, materials and supply. This is where you deal with tools to help to ensure that the administrative work is carried on or carried out. You need material. There are offices that need materials or equipment to be able to do things. You need stationery, you need laptops, you need all these kind of equipment to be able to carry out. But yeah, most of this will actually carry out during your time at work. You know, public finance, administrative accountability. So what I need you to do here, this is the study of public administration, so I won't dwell much because I need you to be reading on these ones. There will be part of your assessment number 1. Very, very important to understand. Now, as we conclude, we can conclude that the study of public administration with the statement of Louis Merriam, which says public administration is an instrument with 2 blades like a pair of scissors. What that means is that they are so sharp in a sense that you cannot have a government without public administration, because government automatically means public administration, the functioning of all those that are being employed in government. They must practice public administration. So 1 blade may be knowledge of the field covered by POSCOP. See how important POSCOP is all about. It is the knowledge that helps you. Now, the other blade is the knowledge of the subject matter in which these techniques are applied. What she's saying here is that You need to study public administration first to have the knowledge of how it works, and then take the knowledge and put it into practice. In other words, the knowledge and the practice. That's how important it is. So both blades must be good to make an effective tool. So that's it for now. I will be sharing the video and I'll be sharing the slides as well. So thank you so much for joining me for the session. Any question can be posted on ICANN so that I can respond effectively. So I want you to listen to the video over and over and understand what I was trying to say. Thank you so much. Have a lovely day. Thank you so much, guys.